So in some parts of the insight meditation communities, there was a decision 10 years ago to celebrate the first week of October as the Earth Care Week. And so when it comes to the beginning of October, when I come and give talks, I like to give a talk on that topic. Today is October 1st. And I just love this word, this combination, putting together in the same phrase, earth care. On the surface, at least, or in kind of first thoughts, associations to the word earth, it's the planet out there. And but care is something that's in here, in our hearts or in our inner life. It's something that arises from us. And so to put these two together is such a beautiful thing, that we have this capacity for care, and we have this earth that we live in, and so we can care for it. And then you could say, well, it cares for us. Earth care could mean not that we care for the earth, but earth care is recognizing that we're cared for by the earth. But that's not maybe so popular to think that way. Both of them cannot be so popular. That we should care for the earth, or that we are being cared for it. I suppose to have the idea that it's caring for us, then we feel like, well, you better do something in return. And but if we don't, the earth is just a hunk of rock floating in space, and we don't need to do anything for it. It's just for us to live our life. But I love to bring them together, earth care. And it also, for me, raises points to some of the great spiritual questions I think religious people, spiritual people are grappling with in one way or the other, explicitly or implicitly. Questions like, who are we? Who are we in relationship to the world? Who are we in relationship to the other people? What is this world we're in it, and what relationship does the world have to me? Who are all these people who are sharing this planet with, and what's their relationship to me? And how do we fit into all this? And in our particular insight meditation tradition, if people just, our anthropologists from Mars came to see us, study what are these people doing, they'd go back to Mars and say, they just close their eyes. And they tune out the world, and they just sit there and look inside, and they seem to be oblivious of the world around them. It's a very peculiar species, and or subspecies. And but as we do this investigation into who we are and what it means to be living here, there's all kinds of interesting things that become clear. One is that we divide up our world in all kinds of ways that are not natural to the world out there, but they're constructs of the human mind. And today is October 1st. That's a construct. It could be some other month that, so in ancient India they used the lunar calendar. So I don't know, we just had the full moon, so 2 days ago? So this wouldn't be the first, it would be the second of this particular cycle of the moon. And then there are probably other calendars people use, and for us it's Sunday, and that's also kind of arbitrary. It was really fun when I lived in the Zen monasteries that they don't follow the 7-day week there. They have a 5-day week. And so this Monday to Sunday, that just wasn't relevant. And no one would say, tomorrow's Monday. The days were named by the number. So days off were not Sunday. Days off were days that the number of the day, the month day, that had a 4 or a 9 in it. So they'd say 4 and 9 days. The next 4 and 9 day, we'll have some time off to do your laundry, they would say, or something. And then 3 and 8 days, there was a special ritual that they did in the monastery. So no one, we kind of forgot about days of the week when we were there. But I think for those of us living in a 7-day week society, we kind of know, what weekday it is. But it's a division that we make up. And to make it even more clear, this whole crazy way in which we divide up our reality, I don't know how many of you know that if we knew Latin, that we would understand that October 1st is the first day of the 8th month, because October in Latin means 8. And then, well, that's like we have it wrong, right? We're confused. The anthropologists from Mars will say, what's going on? And then November is the 9th month, right? No, it comes from the Latin word for 9. December is a Latin word for 10. It's our 12th month. So, these names that we put on things, not only is it arbitrary to divide up the year this particular way, but also it's, we kind of arbitrary the names we put on it. And so we keep making this Latin mistake every year. So, it's a little bit amusing maybe, but what happens is that we do the same thing to ourselves and to the world we live in. We have concepts by which we divide it up. And just the very idea that there's me here and you there is kind of self-evident. And of course we have to operate in a world like that. But it's not completely so straightforward what that division is. Some people will define themselves as radical individuals, completely separate from, who are you? And they'll say, well, I'm this person who's, this age, this size, this color of hair, this kind of interests. And it's all about me, myself, and mine. And it doesn't tell you don't say anything about who you are in relationship to your family or your community or something. And whereas some cultures, if you ask who they are, they'd maybe immediately, first and foremost, say, well, I'm the child of such and such parents, or I'm part of this village or this tribe or something. And that's their identity first comes forward in terms of who they are as part of some other group. And it was fascinating for me to live for a year in a monastery in Japan, and which is one of those cultures where they tend to think of themselves as part of a group more than individuals that are separate from all the other individuals who might make up a group. And it was fascinating to see how I understood the social dynamics differently than all these, there were about 30 monks, young monks that I was living with. And it took a while to see it, but by the time I kind of learned enough Japanese to understand, it was it was really fascinating to see how my way of organizing the world was different than their way of organizing the world. And I didn't think that one was better than the other, but I did think that it's very important to see that what we're doing is we're constructing this thing all the time. So this is a central teachings for the Buddha, that we are constructing ideas about ourselves in relationship to the world we're in. And some of those constructs are when we attach to self, to who we are, that we're attaching to constructs that we make up. And we might think that, we're innocent, we're just kind of living our life and we are what we are, and, and all the concepts we're using are completely self-evident and normal and everything. And they are just as much as October 1st is. And so an example I like to give is in these days is maybe you're deep in the woods. There's a tree that no one's ever seen before, and no one's gone to that part of the woods. But some people go adventurers, go explore. And the first person that goes into the wood is a botanist. And the botanist sees this kind of tree, and the botanist zeroes in on the leaves and the shape of the leaves, because recognizes what genus it is, but doesn't know what species it is, the tree. And that's how you identify the tree, is by the shape. This particular genus is the shape of the leaves. So once the tree has been identified, the botanist goes home and it's happy. Someone who's a sensualist, who loves sensual qualities, goes, and they're like going around looking, where is it really pleasant in the woods, and look at that tree, and it's beautiful flowers, and it smells so nice. And the color green is so, and they just, this is like, better than perfume, and this is, and this is, I'm going to come back here just to kind of get a whiff of this beauty. This is like looking at art, wow. So they're looking at it for particular qualities that they're selecting out. Someone who is a woodworker will go and be looking for the wood that can make good furniture or tables or whatever they make. And so they're going around and trying to identify the kind of wood trees have. And he sees this tree and goes over and knocks on it and pushes on it. And is this hard enough for what I want to do? And it's trying to identify now, recognize in the wood something that the woodworker wants to, whether this is usable, cut down the tree and build something. Someone who's a born again devoted romantic. Comes to the tree, looks at the tree and looks around and looks at the nice grass under it and how it's nice and shady on a warm day. Oh, this is where I should come with my lover. With picnic and, and little figs and chocolate and we'll just lay here under the tree and just kind of looking deep into each other's eyes. And this is like, love incarnate place. And that's the orientation about how it's going to fit their story, their fantasy of this wonderful outing with their lover. The tree doesn't matter too much. It's how it builds up the story. And then finally, I don't know if this works so well, but a painter comes along and decides to paint the tree. And the painter doesn't need to know a lot of the tree except for all its physical characteristics with light and shadows and shapes. And needs a lot of little details, pick up a lot of little details of all the little visible features. And it turns out the painter loves that study, loves the activity, the energy, the interest of the eyes and studying and taking it in and translating it to canvas. And it's like kind of something comes alive for the artist to kind of, tracking and absorbed in all those details. The artist just loves, not the details, but loves the consciousness which is engaged in the play that's needed for the art. So 5 different people, 5 different ways of experiencing a tree. The tree is whole. The tree does not divide itself up this way. The tree does not divide itself up between its branches and its leaves. The tree doesn't say, look at my trunk, it's a little bit too fat. I put on some weight in my middle ages. The tree doesn't think about that its shape of its leaves means that it's, now you're this kind of tree. The tree is an organic whole that doesn't divide up in its mind or anywhere. Its parts, the whole thing as a whole operates as kind of an ecology or as a whole, as a process. But humans have this ability to select out of the environment and make really hard divisions between what's what. So it's maybe a little bit interesting about a tree. It's tragic sometimes about ourselves. We do the same thing to ourselves. We are an organic whole. But how often do we allow ourselves to just be an organic whole without living in the divisions in which we live by? And so some of us are obsessed about our physical appearance. And our society, our culture supports this in all kinds of ways. And how we look is actually significant in how people treat us. So it's very painful at times and distressing and worse that how people relate to us, if it's all about appearance and all that. And so that's one way that we make this division for ourselves. Some people live their life based on comfort. avoiding discomfort. And it's really paramount for some people. Everything's navigating and negotiating, being comfortable or uncomfortable. They don't call themselves sensualists, but that's the basis of their life. The Buddha, in his ancient world, when he considered human beings, he considered that what defines human beings is their concern for pleasure and avoiding pain. That's such a central drive for human beings, a preoccupation for them. And then we have concepts by which we recognize the world. And our concepts we recognize the world with sometimes are inaccurate. Like when you see a stick on the trail in the woods, you think it's a snake, or something, a rope, and you think it's a snake. But sometimes it's inaccurate, and sometimes it's tragic, because how we recognize the concepts we use to see other people demeans people, and worse. Sometimes we take advantage of people, or so we see someone as primarily we recognize them as objects for our sexual interest. And that's pretty uncomfortable for people who are on the receiving end, and more than uncomfortable. And so we have these concepts we carry around with us, and some of them are inherited from our family, our society, our experiences in life. And we don't see that we're seeing through the lens of these concepts we have. And we do that to ourselves. When I was in 7th grade, a teacher came over and watched me make a drawing on my little desk, and just said in the most matter-of-fact way, said, "Gil, you have no artistic talent." Just like, and I didn't care. I didn't have any concept of myself. It didn't actually affect me in terms of my mood, or I didn't feel bad about myself. But she was the authority. So I went for the next years thinking, Mom, I have no artistic ability. I'm just one of those people. It didn't bother me, but I carried that idea with me. And that's how I understood myself, until I had my first college roommate was an artist, and he kind of tricked me into doing art, and then I took art classes, and it was nice. And so we live under the burden of a lot of concepts. That I'm guilty, that I have shame, I did something terrible, and a lot of people live with shame. A lot of people live with conceit of different types. I'm special, or in Buddhism, saying you're special or saying you're terrible is kind of the same game. And both of them have the same source within us that partly is by this division. We're dividing up things that are organic whole. And so we want to kind of free ourselves from these concepts we're stuck in. And so maybe that's enough to kind of describe the way the Buddha sees that we construct. And then we have stories, right, we live in too. And the stories tend to also separate out and divide up and construct, or sometimes stories are complete fantasies. And sometimes we have fantasies, and then we expect other people to share in our fantasies. And sometimes they do. And then it gets, kind of out of control sometimes. And so what this meditation practice that we do is meant to relax, quiet down all these constructions we live by. And so that when we're here on a sunny day with a blue sky, we're not, sitting quietly, minding our own business in meditation, and thinking, October 1st, October 1st, October 1st. This is October 1st. That's, I don't think anyone you did that, did you? Maybe now you're doing it. But you probably had other things you were thinking about. And so the idea is to quiet this down. And as we quiet it down, and the divisions, the constructs we live by, the conceits we live by, the ways in which we get caught by desires and aversions, fears, these quiet down. And one of the things that we begin experiencing is ourself as an organic whole. and which kind of doesn't, it's not so easy just to define it, like this is what it is, because it's so easy then to choose some part of us over the other's part. And so in meditation we learn to leave ourselves alone so that we can just let this organic whole just operate without a construct. It's not let it operate whatever way it wants, with the constructs, with hate, with fear. But there is a quieting down. Partly it quiets down because we start seeing we're doing this. So it's not ignoring or blinder to what we do with all this, but these quiet down. And then we start seeing the difference between living in constructs, projecting our constructs onto the world, and not doing it. Living with all kinds of thoughts of self-criticism, we can be pretty hard on ourselves, and not doing that. And we start seeing there's a difference between that we have some choice about whether we create inside of ourselves constructs that lead to harm, harming others, harming ourselves. And it comes a time where we start being able to choose between them. Say, not that. I don't need to think about that anymore. I don't need to get involved with that. I don't need to divide up the world this way. I can just sit here and breathe nicely and easily. One of the things that can happen eventually, an amazing moment will arise in meditation practice. I hope it's so sooner than later, but sometimes it takes a long time. That you're sitting there, kind of minding your own business in the present moment, being present for yourself, and you discover you're breathing in an easy way. Wow, it's so easeful. The breath is just coming and going. It's an embodiment of ease. I didn't realize how much I control my breath, how much it's held in check. Wow, there's ease in how I breathe. And what is that ease? You don't need to know what it is. You don't have to put a label on it. It's just kind of an ease there. And then, with that easeful breath, that becomes a reference point to begin understanding how you lose it. And you can see if you get involved in certain thoughts, the breath tightens up, and it's not so easy. And you can see all kinds of ways internally, certain emotions arise and affects the breathing. So then you start seeing kind of a little bit how it works, and maybe you have then some ability to adjust things accordingly, to not go along with those thoughts maybe, that way of thinking. But also what happens, we start seeing that what happened in the outer world affects our breathing too. And the way that our inner ease is not only dependent on what's going on inside of us, but also depends on the world around us. Last week there was smoke here in the Bay Area from fires, and that affected our breathing to some degree. And I know my breathing was slightly more labored at times with the smoke here, especially if I try to go for a walk outside. And sometimes it's been a few years ago, it was really bad. And I could feel the extra work it took to be breathing. It didn't feel like it was that easeful to breathe. That represents how, there's something so profound and important for us as our sense of inner ease. It has some effect, is affected by what goes on around us in the environment. And we are not independent of the environment. Many of us want to be independent people, but maybe we can be somewhat independent in certain kinds of ways. But that's just one of the divisions we make, one of the constructs we make, constructs of independence. Some people really want to be independent with a kind of conceit or kind of specialness, or to be not, or so we don't have to be responsible for anybody else. But we live, I think, to think we're all only about our independence overlooks the fact that we are amazingly dependent on other people and on the natural world. Not many of us grow our own food 100% in our society here. Um, not most of us in the society here don't make our own clothes from our own sheep that we shear, and you know, the things that support our life come through the vehicle of other people's efforts and labor and work, and it's just an amazing network of people and things and processes that make it possible for us to live and to live our life. We kind of, in some ways, depend on it. Probably not many of you remember how to knit, if you had to. And so but also the natural world here, we're completely dependent on it. And most of us know that we have to breathe regularly, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So our life depends on having oxygen to breathe in. So we, every few seconds we live in this dependent relationship to the air. And does that make us separate from the air? Are we like an independent thing? Or is the air out there and independent of us? Or is there some way that who we are is inseparable from the air, inseparable from the sun, inseparable from the ground that we walk on? How do we do this divisions? Where do we see where we begin and where we end? Is that arbitrary? Or is there really clear lines between where I end and you begin, where I end and the air is? And lately I've gotten fascinated by the air that we're breathing all the time. And it was pointed out to me this summer that trees, plants, but trees are solid air. Isn't that amazing? Mostly what trees are made from is the carbon that they get from the carbon dioxide in the air. And so imagine, how much carbon does from the air, carbon dioxide, does a tree have to take in to get enough carbon molecules to be a redwood tree? And you look at these big redwood trees, I think in my mind, and I never thought about this, but I think it was just I kind of assumed that plants and trees, most of the solidity there came out of the ground. But actually, most of the solidity most of what we see there, the carbon, comes out of the atmosphere. And because they take the carbon out of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, they release oxygen. And guess who needs the oxygen? We do. And so there's this wonderful process. So now the question is, this tree in the forest, in the woods, right, that I talked about earlier, is it that tree over there, and I'm here? Or are we part of an organic whole? Is the organic whole more than just the tree, more than just me? All these processes that are working together. And is it a little bit arbitrary how we make these divisions? But some of these divisions that are constructs of the human mind cause a lot of suffering. There's a lot of selfishness, a lot of self-focus. Or there can be care. There can be opening the heart and the mind to look around and see that we're not just me, myself, and mine, but maybe what's more realistic, it's we, ours, and ourselves. We're all in it together. And that we, us, ourselves, is much bigger than our human community. It's how we're in a certain kind of community with the natural world, with this earth. Is there an organic whole of the whole earth? And does that organic whole have some bearing on how easy it is for us to breathe? Our inner sense of peace and well-being, where is that found, and where does that come from? And when there's forest fires nearby, How easy do you breathe? When there's, the air is full of smog, how much ease do you have? Do you have more ease when this air is clean and you can see across the bay? Or is there something, maybe almost subconsciously, where it's a little bit oppressive, a little bit, tight and constricted to live in the smog? To hear about people around the world who are living under environmental challenges. Does that have anything to do with you? Are we independent from that? Do we share this planet with others and everything? Or not? And that's a division that we can make, we can construct. But when our consumption of goods is gathered from all over the planet, how independent are we? I don't know if it goes on anymore because China stopped, but China used to take a lot of our garbage until they decided our garbage was too dirty. Our recycling was too dirty. We don't clean our recycling, so it's much harder to recycle if we don't clean it. So this earth care idea is, in our practice, what we're learning is to care for the earth in us, in ourselves, to care for the natural world that we are. And in the deepest way, we are not the mental constructs that we create. We manufacture all kinds of ideas that separate us and divide us and cause a lot of suffering. But that's not who we are. But if we can drop down and quiet those constructs, then we start becoming aware of organic processes within that are not constructs, that are not mental creations. And this is part of the Buddha's emphasis. Over and over and over again, he used similes from nature to describe how it's possible to live a life where our breathing is easy, an easeful breath, an easeful inner life, a peaceful inner life. And it's awakening this natural process inside. But that natural process inside is not apart from the natural process in this earth outside of us. They're intimately connected. They're kind of part of the same whole, same kind of evolutionary things where all these processes are coming together and moving back and forth. And so to care for ourselves, you can't really do it unless you care for the world around you. If you care for only yourself, then you're living in a divided world, more constructs. If you care only for the world outside, same thing. You're living in a divided world and constructs. But I would like to propose that when we can settle enough the constructs, the preoccupations of the mind, that then the opportunities here that the care that we have is part of the natural working of life. The organic functioning of human life has within it the capacity to care, to be concerned, to love, to be generous, to be attuned to the welfare of self and others, and to be interested in supporting others and caring for others, or being kind and being supportive and sharing this planet together. Not because we should, not because there's an obligation, but because that's what lives in us if we drop into this place where the natural world has a chance to flow through us. And why it works that way, why this natural world has created us in this kind of way, that it's natural for us to want to care for our babies. Some of you have had kids. It's pretty deeply ingrained to have this kind of parental instinct. Of course we care. And that care doesn't have to stop with our babies or our children or our parents or our neighbors. That movement to care is a completely natural phenomenon. It's part of the natural world we have. And to allow that to be to grow and expand and spread, so that the care is in all directions. And whatever we touch, whatever we see it with care, we see it with kindness, we see it with appreciation, we see it as part of the organic whole, as opposed to seeing it through our greed or our hate or our conceit. And so, for there to be earth care is, I think, a profound thing. I think it's a profound, natural thing that human beings, given a chance to tap into their depth inside, will care for themselves, will care for the people around them, will care for this world, at the same time as we know that we are being cared for. Maybe not to the degree to which we would like. The stock market wasn't cooperating today and caring for me. I don't know if that's a good way of thinking. That's more divisions. But this world is caring for us in profound ways. Otherwise we wouldn't be alive. And to drop the concern with the stock market or whatever, and to appreciate that we can breathe, and that there's water to drink, and there are people around us who smile, and maybe people who appreciate that we smile back. That's a beautiful thing. So earth care. This is not something you have to do, but it is something which I hope will come from your inner freedom as you discover your capacity to really drop below all the divisions and constructs that the mind tends to make, and feel like you're part of an organic whole of this planet. And I hope we take care of this planet well, because it's a way of taking care of our family, our communities, what we love, and it's a way of taking care of ourselves. So thank you. Earth care this week. So maybe this week can be a week that you consider this topic. Maybe just keep this phrase in your mind, earth care. Maybe ask your friends, what do you think that means, earth care? You can say, where I go and meditate, this is the earth care week. And what do you think of this? Think about it, and see what direction your heart goes if you keep this close by for the week. So thank you very much. And as I said, I'll go if we go outside in the parking lot, and if those of you who would like to talk about this some more or say hello in other ways, form a little circle there with the chairs, and then for maybe 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll allow the Dharma sprouts to come in here, get set up. Thank you.